Good morning, everyone. Namo Shakyamuni Buddha, and welcome back to our first meditation class that we've had in quite some time. I feel like it's been forever, and it kind of has been actually, right? So I kind of just wanted to start this back up, even though it's virtually, so hopefully everyone that used to come to the class is still with us here in spirit and in virtual. So I thought I would just go ahead and restart it up virtually this time and kind of continue from where I wanted to continue from. But I believe we did complete pretty much all our lesson topics when we had our last class in February. So today what I wanted to use this opportunity to is pretty much just go back to basics and kind of do a quick refresher about some of the basic meditation ideas and techniques. So we'll cover that today, and hopefully, depending on how much I talk, I'll try to give us some time to sit for meditation together. Do feel free to ask questions. I will attempt to monitor the comments on YouTube and on Facebook, so if you do have any questions during the discussion, feel free to ask. I will try to keep an eye out on those with you as soon as I open it up, because I am unprepared. So, as I mentioned, so we'll be going back to basics, basically, pretty much. And I feel like that's probably an important topic to cover since it's been quite some time since we've had a class together. And also since we really haven't covered much of the basic topics since pretty much the first couple of months of the class started last year, only because since then we've covered pretty much different types of meditation techniques and methods. So we've kind of advanced along in a way. So for those of you that are new or just kind of need that quick refresher, hopefully this will be a great opportunity for everyone. Now that we're mostly all home or working from home in some way, shape, or form, it'll give us the opportunity to meditate more, or at least give us some more time to meditate, hopefully. And that way, hopefully everyone's been meditating. I know it's been chaotic for the most part, but it should still have given us time to do short meditations or even some walking meditation outside. It's been pretty nice outside for the past maybe a week or so since it stopped raining for like a week straight or something. So that has been a really nice opportunity for me, at least, to be going out and doing some walking meditation, because that's unfortunately the least type of meditation I do. But I do try. So we'll go ahead and get started. I think I have everything up. If I don't see your comment, I apologize. If you do ask a question, I do apologize I haven't seen it, but I will attempt to get to it eventually, either by direct reply, or I'll just email you back, or you can email me. Otherwise, let's just go ahead and get started. So, as I mentioned, so we're going to go ahead back to basics. So what I would like to do is I had to refresh my own memory about what we've discussed. Basically the first maybe the 2-3 classes of the meditation class last year that we started. So I'll kind of be going over some of those points, but what I really want to mostly focus on today is just what to do, right? How to get back into the groove, or what do we need to do. So first things first, I have seen a few comments, messages here and there about people wondering about some of the fringe benefits or some of the side effects of meditation, which are helpful and healthy for a lot of people, right? Because it does reduce your stress, some anxiety, and all that other stuff. But that's really just mostly side effects. That's kind of the fringe benefits that we get from meditation. But meditation itself, at least Buddhist meditation, is a disciplined practice. So we should be using it for ways of contemplation and gaining wisdom and insight, not for releasing our headaches, right? The Buddha didn't teach his disciples to meditate because they had headaches. So we want to try to avoid meditating specifically just for those reasons, right? If it happens, if you are suffering from anxiety or, blood pressure or whatever, then if you're meditating specific for that, that's great. Go for it. But specifically in my series and my classes for meditation, it is specifically for Buddhist meditation, which is a disciplined practice. So I will be teaching it in that way. So that sometimes, in some of the past students know me that know that I'm pretty straightforward and pretty disciplined when I'm trying to teach, because it is something that's not difficult, but it's not easy either. So you really have to put in the effort. You have to put in the determination and the will to actually want to accomplish meditation, because that's the only way it's going to help you, is if you do put in the benefit, put in the practice and the time and the determination to actually do it, right? But pretty much in kind of in one sentence meditation, or Buddhist meditation, specifically about concentration. That is the main point. That's the main focus of meditation, is concentration. Buddhist meditation, for the most part, generally falls under two types: concentration or samatha, or insight or contemplation, which is vipassana meditation. Samatha and vipassana. So for most people, it's easier generally to practice and kind of master in some way the concentration part before you move on to contemplation, because you really need to know how to concentrate on your object of meditation before you're able to go into contemplation. Otherwise, if you try to jump into contemplation right away, there's a lot of tendency to get distracted, because contemplation is really focusing on a topic, right? For Buddhists, it's focusing and contemplating on a Dharma discussion or a Dharma topic, right? Like karma, or the Four Noble Truths, or the Eightfold Path, or one of the branches of that. And that's what we're contemplating on. We're basically analyzing the topic in order to kind of sift out the wisdom and the insight that we would gain from it. But without concentration, without being able to really focus on it, what tends to happen is, while we're trying to contemplate that topic, some other topics kind of jump in and distract us and take over, right? Like for me, I go off topic quite often during my Dharma discussions. So that kind of what happens. You may tend to go off topic if you kind of jump into contemplation before you're really ready to do it. So for most of our series of classes last year and early this year, we've covered different concentration methods. We've gone over many different meditation methods. I've gone over many meditation methods with you, about breathing, about walking, visualization, even chanting or mantra meditation. So I've given you different tools to meditate with, because there's really no one right way, right? The Buddha himself taught many different ways to meditate, and he taught different types of Dharma and different types of teachings to his students, because everyone learns differently. So that's the same reason I've given you different methods and ways to meditate, is because one way may work better for you than something else, right? And so it's good to experiment with different types of meditation, different ways to meditate, because it's going to benefit you more than it's going to benefit anybody else, right? You have to find what way works for you best, whether it's counting your breaths, or visualization, or chanting, or doing some mantras. Whatever works for you best, you want to kind of use that and master that technique as much as you can before you move on to something more difficult or more advanced. So for today, we'll kind of go back to breathing, the breathing technique, which is the most basic and most traditional way. It's the way that the Buddha taught his disciples and students of meditation, is to count the breath. Before I get into that, I do want to remind of the posture and of some of the arrangements of meditating before you actually meditate, right? So I've always advocated for sitting meditation. So if you can sit on the ground, that is the best way, and that's my number one recommendation. However, you are able definitely to meditate on a chair, right? So if sitting is if sitting is an issue for you, then definitely use a chair to meditate on. If sitting on a chair becomes an issue, then I would recommend walking if you're able to. Otherwise, you can, of course, meditate laying down on a bed or something flat. If that, I would consider that pretty much the last resort, because if you get too comfortable, then we might tend to fall asleep, and of course, we want to avoid that. If we're sitting on the ground, do sit cross-legged. I highly recommend at least a half lotus position if you're unable to do the full lotus. The half lotus is what I do because it's most comfortable for me, which is basically just putting one foot or leg over the other versus putting both feet on your legs, because that does help stabilize the body. And what you also want to do is try to sit on a cushion or two. You do want to get your butt a little bit higher off the ground, at least leveled with your thighs and legs, if not higher. That way you kind of create this triangle foundation, which creates a very stable posture and position for you to sit on, and it's the most comfortable, and it helps reduce your legs and your feet from falling asleep. It may still happen, but it won't be as painful. Maybe, I don't know. But I've gotten used to it, so if it happens, it happens. I always say to kind of suck through it and then just kind of suck it up and do it, because if you're falling asleep is something that's gonna happen, but it's something you really have to learn to deal with and work through, because that's how your body adapts to it. You really have to train your body to get used to some of the meditation pains and some of the aches. Otherwise, if it's something too painful, then of course you do want to adjust yourself. Try to move around a little bit if you have to. If you have to switch legs, if you're doing the half lotus, do that. But remember, every time you make an adjustment to your body or movement, do it with mindfulness. Make a mental note that you're moving or that you're adjusting, something that kind of keeps you in sane focus while you're meditating. So the first step is to sit cross-legged if you're able to, and of course you want to keep your back straight. The way that I teach everyone to have their back as straight as possible with the most comfortable position is to lift your arms over your head as high as you can, stretch them out, and then just slowly bring them down to your sitting position. And that will give you the straightest, most comfortable back. That's the most natural straight back that you can get, and it'll be comfortable. If you do slouch, like I've always mentioned, like our back and our muscles in general are like Play-Doh, right? Once you mold it into place, and it'll stay there, right? If you stay concentrated. But if there's any external force, in this case, any distracting thoughts, the external force is going to change the mold of the Play-Doh or change your back, right? It starts slouching. But if you stay concentrated and stay focused the whole time and you don't have that external force of those distracting thoughts, then your back will stay straight up for the duration of your meditation. But again, if you do have to adjust yourself, do it with mindfulness and just make a mental note that you're adjusting or you're lifting or you're moving, whatever it may be. Just make that quick mental note of what you're doing. That way you don't do it abruptly and do it too quick. You want to do it slowly and with mindfulness. So once you get your back straight, you want to get your shoulders straightened as well. So you want to keep your shoulders bring your shoulders back. You may want to lift them, roll them back, and just bring them down. That way they're kind of they're adjusted with your back as well, straight with your back. And then after you do your shoulders, you want to keep your neck and your head straight up as well. We recommend that you keep your head face at a 45-degree angle, looking down slightly, but you want to keep your neck straight with your back as well. Your eyes and mouth should be semi-closed. So your eyes should be semi-closed if possible, right? You just want to be able to see maybe no more than 5 to 6 feet in front of you. We don't want to keep them completely open, because if you do, then we may get distracted by our surroundings, or we see something moving or something shiny, right? We get distracted, so we want to avoid that. And then our mouth, sometimes when we keep our mouth completely closed, we tend to maybe grind our teeth or kind of clench our jaw, and we want to avoid that. So we want to keep at least our teeth slightly apart, right? Traditionally, it's said you want to keep your teeth apart as much as you're able to put in a grain of rice, right? So that's how much space you want to keep between your teeth. That way you're not really clenching that jaw, you're not really having that stress in your mouth. And then of course we're going to put our hands together, our palms on top of each other. Your right hand on top of your left with your thumbs slightly touching or barely touching. And you want to keep them on your lap here, a little bit closer to your belly button if you're able to, but at least keep them on your lap. If that doesn't work for you, then you can keep them on your knees. But if you do keep your hands on your knees, then don't use your knees as support. You don't want to push yourself up or keep yourself up by putting that pressure on your knees and arms. You just want to slightly lay your hands on your knees and then just let them sit. Don't hold yourself up. Don't push yourself or anything like that. So that is it for the positioning of sitting. If you're in a chair, you pretty much want to do the same thing. The only difference is that you're going to keep your feet flat on the ground. Don't cross your feet. Don't keep your feet wrapped around the legs of the chair or anything. You're going to keep your feet flat on the ground, and you're pretty much going to do the same thing for everything else. You're going to keep your back straight, your shoulders back, your hands on your lap or on your knees, and then looking down at a 45-degree angle. So once you're in a stable, comfortable position, before we actually get started for the meditation, it's always good to do a few deep breaths, just to kind of get you in that mind zone, the state of mind of calming down. Because if we're walking around or we're doing something before we sit down, then our breath may be out of its normalcy. So we want to try to normalize it before we actually start the meditation session. So you can do at least 3 deep breaths just to kind of stabilize that breath before we get into it. That way it's a little bit easier to focus and keep our concentration. So once you've taken your deep breaths, what you can also do, side note, before we sit down, here's my off-topic part, is you can do a little bit of stretching. I always do stretching before and after meditation because it really helps loosen the body and loosen the joints. So do stretching because it'll really help keep your body a little bit comfortable, and it'll kind of untense your body as you're sitting, and it'll help kind of circulate your body a little bit before you actually sit down, because if you're going to be sitting down for at least 30 minutes or to an hour or so, you're going to be in the same position, and you may get some aches and pains here and there, but if you at least do some stretching beforehand, it'll really help reduce some of those aches and pains and really help keep you way more comfortable for the duration of your session. So if once you've stretched out and once you sit down, so as I mentioned today, we're gonna go over the counting the breaths, which is the most traditional form of meditation. So when we're counting the breath, right after you've taken your deep breaths and you settle for a little bit, then we can start doing the counting. So basically, generally what we're just doing is just counting our breaths from 1 to 10. So for every in and out breath, you want to count 1. Every in and out breath, you count 2. In and out, you count 3, all the way up to 10. And then you repeat. So that's what's said in the sutras. That's how the Buddha taught his students. What I recommend it to add in there is once you reach the 10, go backward from 10 to 1. That'll give you an extra kind of exercise to focus on, because it's a little bit difficult to count backwards. It's difficult to count in general because we kind of tend to get distracted, and what happens when we get distracted is we lose count, or we go way past 10, right? Because we're not focusing, we're not concentrating. So we may think we're doing okay because we're counting, but next thing you know, you're like in the hundreds because you're not paying attention to what you're actually doing. So I recommend to do the counting from 1 to 10 and then just move backwards from 10 to 1 and then just repeat, right? And if for any reason you get distracted or you lose count, then you just want to start over back to 1. And don't try to find your place, don't try to remember where you left off, just let it go and then just repeat back to 1. So we're just counting 1 to 10 and then 10 to 1. And then another thing that tends to happen is as we're counting, we may have a tendency to control our breath, right? So we're controlling the movement, we're controlling the inhale and the exhale, and we don't want to do that. We're not controlling our breath, we're simply just watching, we're observing our breath. So a good thing to do is don't count before you breathe or as you breathe, but count a little bit, like a fraction of a second after you breathe in and after you breathe out. That way the breath helps naturalize the breath a little bit more. Because in the beginning, if you're doing this for the first time, you may not notice that you're controlling your breath, but as you move along, you're gonna notice, hopefully, that as you're basically telling your breath, hey, this is the inhale, this is the exhale, and that's what's happening. And basically, there's a control there that we want to avoid. So as you breathe in and out, wait a fraction of a second before you mentally note 1 or then whatever number it is, right? That way everything becomes a little bit more natural and it's easier to focus, hopefully. Okay, so as we're breathing, right? You're breathing in, you're breathing out, you count 1, you breathe in, you breathe out, count 2, in, out, 3, up until 10, and then from 10 you might count backwards from 10 to 1. And you basically want to do this for the whole session of your meditation. And it may sound simple, but it really isn't, because we may get distracted. If you do become distracted, don't get discouraged. Don't hate on yourself or say you're not doing it right, because if you get distracted and if you've noticed a distraction, then that's actually a huge accomplishment, that you've noticed you're being distracted. Because what tends to happen is we get distracted and then we start entertaining those thoughts, and next thing you know it, you're in like la la land, imagining 10 years from now, and you're like, what just happened? And next thing you know it, like 30 minutes has passed by. So that, of course, we would avoid from happening. So if you do get distracted and you've noticed it, count that as an accomplishment. Whether you've noticed the distraction, the second it happened or a minute or two afterward, it doesn't matter. As long as you've noticed the distraction, then that's a huge accomplishment, and then you can just tell your mind to go back to your meditation object, which in this case is counting the breath, and you just want to go back and repeat. So don't worry if you get distracted, because it will happen. It happens to me, it happens to everybody. Distractions happen. That's just the habit of our mind wanting to get distracted from the things in the past and imagine the things in the future. But that's why we meditate, because we want to avoid that, right? One of the other reasons we meditate is to have a clear mind and have a free mind, to rid ourselves of negative thinking and negative thoughts and negative doing, especially nowadays, right? There's so much going on that we tend to get angry pretty quickly, and we tend to react pretty quickly without really thinking about it. But if we're able to meditate for quite some time, and we're able to really restructure our mind and wire our mind to think and to be mindful first and then react later, then that's really going to help us in the long run, because that way we're not reacting right away with negativity or anger or hatred. We are able to really take in what's happening, be mindful of it, contemplate on what's on the situation, and contemplate on what we want to create as a result, right? Because we have a tendency to really react without thinking a lot of the times, and that's what we want to try to avoid. And by meditating, by constant meditation, that's something that we can help ourselves kind of overcome. Especially now, I'm pretty sure we all need some of that mind medicine. And that's what meditation is mind medicine. And now that hopefully some of us have a little bit more time, if you are working from home or working less hours, you have a little bit more time for meditation. Meditation doesn't have to be for a long period. It doesn't have to be for an hour or 30 minutes even. For meditation, it's really about the quality, not about the quantity. So even if you're meditating for 5 minutes, if it is genuine meditation for 5 minutes, that's going to benefit you more than if you've meditated for 30 minutes, but all you've been doing is being distracted and thinking about food or what you need to do tomorrow, right? So really try to, what I recommend is to set a time, right? Since meditation is reprogramming your mind, you're rewiring how your mindset is. I recommend having a solid schedule for meditation every day. So set a time, 5, 10, 15, 20 minutes every day at the same time, whether it's once or twice a day. Just set at the same time and do it consistently, and do it with effort. That way your mind knows, hey, every day I'm doing meditation this time, and when the time comes, your mind already knows, right? Your mind's being trained to know that this is time for meditation, and that way it's a little bit easier to get into. It may be hard at first, I will tell you that. It may be difficult for at least the first couple of weeks to a month, because you're doing something new, right? You're training your mind to do something new, and if we are meditating with a lot of distractions, which is not a problem, we may get discouraged and we may think that we're doing it wrong, or we're not doing something right, or something's happening that you're kind of going down on yourself, and you really it's discouraging you from wanting to meditate. So when the time does come, you're like, oh no, I'll just push it off, or I'll do it tomorrow, and you really don't want to do that. Try to do it, as even if your mind or if your body is telling you you don't want to do it, just do it. Just basically you're forcing yourself to get into the habit, and you're training your body and your mind to get into that habit, because it is a habit. It is a habit you have to train for, like everything else that we do, right? So just get into the habit of scheduling that time for meditation. Get in the habit of meditating for a certain amount of time. Start small if you have to, 5-10 minutes, and then kind of every few weeks, as you feel yourself adjusting more to meditation and getting more into it, then increase the amount of time, at least by 5-minute increments. That way you can at least get up to maybe 30 to 45 to 60 minutes if you're able to, and that'll help out. So I did not speak for as much as I thought, fortunately for us. So I'll give us some time to meditate together. We'll do it for 20 minutes. So I'm just going to go through really quick of our social media here to see if there's any questions from anybody. That way that I can hopefully answer them now, if I can manage myself around here. And I do apologize if the video is still a little bit choppy. I'm still trying to work on that. I honestly don't know what's going on. I thought I was tech savvy, but apparently I'm not as tech savvy as I thought I was. So I apologize. But I am trying to fix it. I do promise that. Because at one point it was seamless. For some reason, something changed, or I messed up somewhere where now it's a little bit choppy. So hopefully by tomorrow for our Sunday service, um, I'll have it fixed. Hopefully, crossing our fingers. Okay, so I don't see any questions or any comments. So again, if you do have any questions or comments, feel free to either make a comment in one of the on Facebook or on YouTube as a comment, or you can email us. Our email is either on our website and it's also on our Facebook page. Send a quick email and I will try to answer your question either directly on the internet somewhere, or I can answer it tomorrow after the Dharma talk for our Sunday service. Okay, so since there's no questions, I will give us 20 minutes to meditate together, since we haven't done that in quite some time. So I'll give us 20 minutes, hopefully. Okay, so 20 minutes on the clock. So if you're home, please join me. Please join me on, if you're able to sit on the ground or in the chair, just make yourself comfortable. Get all your posture correct. And just remember to count your breath. Stay focused if you're able to. If you lose count, start over. If you do have to make any adjustments or movements, do it with mindfulness and do it slowly. Don't do it abruptly or too quickly. And just make that mental note, right? Same thing if you get distracted, if you hear a sound or anything else, just make a quick mental note and just go back to your breathing. So we'll go ahead and get started. I'll ring the bell. Welcome back, everyone. I hope we had a relaxing and nice, distraction-free, maybe, meditation. If not, as I said earlier, continue to practice, continue to set aside time every day if you can to do meditation. It doesn't have to be as long as we practice today, so it doesn't have to be 20 minutes, but at least 10 minutes or so, 10 or 15 minutes every day, just to help get you into the habit of meditation. And then over time, it will become much easier and better for you. So we'll end it there. Again, if you have any questions or anything else you'd like to ask or say, feel free to leave a comment on YouTube or on Facebook or anywhere, or send an email to us, and I will try to answer your question via the internet, or perhaps more after the Sunday service if we have time. So hope everyone enjoyed that session. Again, we will continue this every second and fourth Saturday of the month at 10 a.m. hopefully soon we can have these sessions back in person again. And then hopefully my hope is that the next time we have our meditation retreat, it will be in our new shrine, our new temple. So that'll be very exciting and very nice to have. Temple is scheduled to be complete in August, or at least by the end of August. So perhaps September, October, we'll have our next retreat. I try not to have it any time during July or August because those are pretty like the hottest times of the year. And I'm not a fan of the heat, or at least that much heat. So, so hopefully we'll play by ear. But I hope to see everyone soon, and I hope everyone will join me tomorrow for our Sunday service.